second passage will be.
Yeah.
You don't schedule a public because if it doesn't get first passage, then you're just kind of, no need to rile up the public.
Well, the order just have public hearing at the same time as their.
You ready?
Capacity at once.
Okay. All right, welcome, good evening, and welcome to the October 8, 2025 regular meeting of the Bath City Council. We are now in session. Let's start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'm going to turn to Darcy Wheeler, our city clerk, for roll call.
Counselor Ambrosino.
Here.
Counselor Marks.
Here.
Counselor Gazzetti.
Here.
Counselor Norman is absent at this time. Counselor Dunn.
Here.
Counselor Duchamp.
Here.
Counselor McCorkle.
Present.
And Counselor Mansfield Pryor.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you, Darcy. So we did not have any presentations on the agenda tonight, so we can skip right to public comment. This is a time specifically for the public to speak on a topic that does not appear later on in the agenda. So at a certain point tonight, we will get to unfinished, or I should say only tonight, new business agenda items. That will be a time for the public to come up to the podium and speak specifically about those agenda items when cued by the chair. Now is a time for any persons wishing to speak about any item that does not show up later on the agenda. We would ask that you approach the podium and state your name and address. If you are online on Zoom, we ask that you raise your hand and we will call on you. The council shall limit remarks to 5 minutes or less. We ask that you note concurrence with another speaker rather than simply repeating their points, and that you speak no more than twice in any one meeting. Any comments should be limited to an expression of opinions, concerns, or questions, and will be directed through the chair. So we can't have people addressing other folks in the audience or specific counselors. Public comment period is a time for residents to bring issues to the attention of council. Please note that counselors and the chair cannot answer questions in real time, so we cannot really have a back and forth discussion or conversation with you during the meeting, but we absolutely appreciate hearing from you. We ask for respectful and civil participation at all times. Now, is there anyone who would like to approach the podium, has something they would like to bring to our attention or speak about tonight? Thank you.
Yeah, hi, Scott Dunn, 904 Washington Street. I understand that there's a proposal regarding the short-term residents, Airbnbs, if you will.
So that is an item that's on the agenda tonight.
Oh, is it? Okay, didn't see on the, okay.
It should be, let me see. It is the last thing that we will get to tonight, number 103, our new proposed ordinance.
Oh, okay.
Short-term rentals.
Okay.
So at that point, I will
Yeah,
call
okay.
for any public comment and I'll ask
Yeah,
you to come right on up.
residents, this, yeah.
Okay, great. Anyone else? Anyone who'd like to talk about a topic that's not on the agenda tonight? Thank you.
Hi, City Council members. I'm Sarah Gattay from 14 Week Street. I'm here tonight with a concern and to ask for your help. For more than 4 months, BOW has been making a loud, persistent beeping noise. It sounds like beep, 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 like a large truck backing up. I think we're all familiar with that kind of sound. Starts around 6 a.m. and continues all day until after 10:30 p.m. That's typically when I fall asleep. It may go later. It's almost all day. It's almost every day, even Saturdays and Sundays. It's not absolutely constant, but it's close. Every once in a while we get a quiet night or a quiet day, which feels like heaven. Otherwise, we listen to this beeping almost constantly. We keep our windows closed to dull out the sound. I wear earplugs every night to allow me to sleep because of it. And when I've called the police to report violation of the city noise ordinance, they tell me that there's nothing they can do because it's BIW. I've been working with a person at BIW to try to address it for months. He tells me there's nothing he can do. He's someone that I've worked with frequently over the almost 10 years that we've lived in our current house, and he's been really helpful with other issues. This one, he tells me they can't stop it. Apparently it's a man lift and it's a safety noise, but it violates the city noise ordinance. So there has to be a solution that we can find. So I'm coming to all of you to ask for help in getting BIW to follow the city noise ordinances, which should prevent them from emitting this much noise early in the morning and late at night. I don't think all of you should have to be in the position to enforce this, but I don't know where else to turn. And I'm like, honestly, I'm exhausted. I'm at my wit's end with it. And so I'm bringing it to you guys for help resolving it, or for guidance for me for like what should, if I need to resolve it myself, like do you have any suggestions for what I do next? I'm just kind of like, I'm out of options. I believe that BIW is supposed to monitor their noise emissions and that there are DEP requirements about the noise levels at the property boundaries. But I'm just a regular person trying to get some sleep at night at my house. I don't know about all that. So anyway, I'd love guidance or help of any type, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. All right, is there anyone else who would like to approach the podium? Anyone else who has a public comment? All right, no other public comments. And any online? Okay. All right, then we will move on to the manager's report. I'll turn to Mark Myers, our city manager.
Thank you, Chair Johnson, members of the City Council. First off, I want to start through with some annual October events to make sure they're on people's radars. The first is actually tomorrow night, so the Bath Fire Department Open House is tomorrow night, Thursday, October 9th, from 6 to 8 p.m. There'll be live demonstrations, giveaways, opportunity to meet our firefighters, check out the vehicles and apparatus there, as well as a kids' fire pole. So certainly if you haven't been before, or if it's part of your annual celebrations in Bath, don't miss that event coming up. We also have a couple of upcoming landfill events. First off, the always exciting Fall Cleanup Week. So that will be the week of October 20th, so Monday, October 20th to Friday, October 24th from 7:30 to 4 p.m. And then Saturday, October 25th from 8 to 3:30 p.m. At that time, Bath residents are able to bring a pickup load of bulky demo waste, a pickup load of metal, 2 tires, and 2 pickup loads of brush or yard waste for no charge during the cleanup period. All regular items do require the normal fees that are associated with that, but it's a great opportunity to be able to bring those items in and be able to bring them in for no cost. And then next to have on the radar is the curbside leaf collection. The first round of that is Monday, October 27th and Tuesday, October 28th. Don't worry if your leaves haven't come down by then. There's a second opportunity in November, Monday, November 17th and Tuesday, November 18th. The council may remember, public may remember, this will actually be the first year the city is doing this process in-house. So Public Works is prepared, has been going through what that process would be, but there may be a little bit of patience and learning curve over that first round of leaf collection, but I think we've got a pretty good handle on what the work entails and the staffing we need for it. And then lastly, I just wanted to touch base real quick on, over the past month, there's been 2 accidents involving children. One, a pedestrian vehicle accident near Fisher Mitchell School, and another between an e-scooter and a vehicle at Bath Middle School. Certainly we urge everyone to stay alert, use extra caution when they're walking or biking or driving in the school areas, especially at the morning and afternoon dismissal times when you've got heavier traffic through those areas. There was a news report a couple of days ago that mentioned that there was going to be a community meeting about reinstating crossing guards next week on October 15th. That is not the case. The meeting next week on Wednesday, October 15th is actually, the Bike Pedestrian Committee is getting feedback on the Lincoln Street traffic calming project. So that's Wednesday, October 15th at 4 p.m. at Donald Small School. Certainly we've been having some conversations about the opportunity to be able to receive community feedback as school zone safety, on school zone safety, and we'll make sure that we, get any information out. And we've been in contact with the RSU on a couple of occasions about these incidents as well, but we will keep you posted if any additional community feedback sessions or meetings come up on the calendar. That's all.
Okay, great. Thank you. All right, then let's turn to committee reports. I know a lot of committees have been very busy. Would anyone like to kick off our committee reports tonight? I feel like the Bath Development Corporation finally has their Fit Up grant live. I don't have the materials in front of me, so I'll defer to Councilor Ambrosino if she does.
Thank you.
Okay.
I was pulling it up. Yeah, they have, a press release was coming, and that it is going live with the Fit Up grant finally for offering these grant opportunities to entrepreneurs in Bath to expand their businesses or start up a new business in Bath with improving the interior and the facade to get them going. And so we hope this is just one of the tools we can use for economic development downtown and filling up the spaces, across Bath, not just downtown, but filling up empty storefronts and continue seeing us thrive, bring people in, shop, and help prop up small businesses.
And those are matching grants, not loans, of up to
Yes.
$12,500.
Yep.
So
And,
it's.
We have a round, I think, starting with 50,000 total of funds to be used and 12,500 for these grants. And then we also have our microloan program, so that's also something to explore if people with small businesses are interested.
Excellent. Anyone else? Okay. Then we will move right through this agenda. We have the consent agenda then. We have only 2 items on here. There are the minutes of the previous 2 meetings from the September 3rd, 2025 regular meeting and the September 17, 2025 special meeting. Do we have a motion to accept these as presented?
So moved.
Okay, then we can move right to a roll call vote.
Counselor Ambrosino.
Yes.
Counselor Marks.
Yes.
Counselor Gazzetti.
Yes.
Counselor Nordman.
Yes.
Counselor Dunn.
Yes.
Counselor Deshant.
Yes.
Counselor McCorkle.
Yes.
And Counselor Mansfield Pryor.
Yes.
Thank you.
So we have no unfinished business tonight, so we can move right to new business. We're going to start with item number 2025-97. This is an order, an approval of the election warrant to notify residents of the City of Bath of the state, the RSU 1 and municipal election to be held on Tuesday, November 4, 2025. Do I have what?
I think I sent it the wrong one. That's my fault. 97, because
Oh.
this is the other one, that was the Word document I moved in.
Never mind.
That's my fault.
Apparently
So
it has
let's
been
go.
rearranged. I
Right.
just have an outdated agenda in front of me.
So it's this
Okay.
one here.
So we're gonna move to Recreation Committee.
Yes.
Okay. All right, first item up then. Sorry that I'm out of order here. This is 97, authorizing the Recreation Commission, right, to raise funds for Goddard's Pond Warming Hut and an improvement project. Steve Balboni was a step ahead of me and I already stood up, so he knew I was out of order. Do we have a motion to put this item on the floor?
So moved. Second.
Excellent. Motion is on the floor. I will turn to Steve Balboni, the Director of Parks and Recreation, to give us an overview of this proposed project.
Thank you, Chairperson Johnson. Thank you, members of the council. I thought it was a trick at first, what item it was.
It's to keep you on your toes.
Keep me on my toes. You have a memo in your packet that talks a little bit about Goddard's Pond and what we're looking to do. We obviously came off a very successful year last year at Goddard's Pond. We loan out somewhere around 225 pairs of skates to the community. We had a record skating year for numbers last year, and it still continues to be a free program that's kind of the pure natural recreation of the city of Bath. You know, pictures from today look just like pictures from 1960s of people out there skating. It's quite an experience. I've come to you a number of different times to talk about improvements at Goddard's Pond. One of those, we would like to create an outdoor warming area similar to what Lost Valley has, a small propane fire pit with some seating around it, that's controlled fire pit. Be only on when we're there. A serving window outside, just to create a space for parents or people to rest and kind of do a little upgrade to the warming hut. The 3 members of the rec commission are here. They're excited to be behind the project, so similar to the fire department's hand tub, we're here to ask you for the approval to move forward. And I'll quickly turn it over to Chairperson John Desjardins just to talk a little bit about the commission side, and then I can answer any questions you may have.
Good evening. My name is John Desjardins. I'm chairman of the Recreation Commission, and I was railroaded into that position about 2 years ago because nobody else wanted it. But anyhow, we think it's a great project. We have had questions about our purpose being there, other than a sounding board for Steve to give advice and counsel. We listen, we talk, we discuss things. This is one of the first movements I've seen that's been initiated by commission member, Mr. McKellar, and we talked about this warming hut and the emphasis on Goddard's Pond and the warming area. We all have good memories of it. I remember skating there for years with my son, playing hockey and everything else. It's great. I think it's all part of our collective memories. I don't see anything negative about it. There's no effect on the tax base, as it will be basically, I think, privately funded with donations and contributions. Steve has a budget all set up, and I encourage you to allow us to start collecting money so we can get a head start on the project. And thank you for listening. Good.
Thank you. I'm going to turn to council comment. Is there any initial council comment on this item? Any public comment? Do you have anything you want to add, Steve, before I move to final
No,
council
I would
comment?
just say that, the rec commission has taken a lot of initiative this past year with raising money for our scholarship fund, and really under both John and Bill McKellar and Al, that has joined the board, that really have moved forward to put some funds away for kids to participate. And, while we're looking at a warming area, we hope that we raise enough funds to upgrade some things on the building, the siding, the doors, the windows, inside, and things like that. We have very strong support behind Goddard's Pond, so we're excited to kind of get going. We want to move as fast as we can before we start filling the pond. So if approved, the city will do some groundwork for prep work, and then we'll start fundraising.
Excellent, thank you. Any final council comment on this item? No? Okay, then let's move right to a roll call vote.
Counselor Mansfield Pryor.
Yes.
Counselor McCorkle.
Yes.
Counselor Duchamp.
Yes.
Counselor Dunn.
Yes.
Counselor Nordman.
Yes.
Counselor Gazzetti.
Yes.
Counselor Marks.
Yes.
And Counselor Ambrosino.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, then we can move on to item number 2025-98. This is an approval of the Bath Police Department request for an unmanned aerial vehicle, UAV, AKA a drone, I believe, acquisition program. Is there a motion to put this item on the floor?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, motion is on the floor. I'm going to turn to Chief Booth, who is already on his way up to the podium here. Give us an overview.
Members of the council, this is a request for your permission and your approval for us to acquire and use a drone for law enforcement purposes. Drones and UAVs have been in wide use by all sorts of different industries currently. We have relied on UAVs from other law enforcement agencies for various things like the recent drowning in the river for search and rescue. We did use them on some serious incidents within the last couple of years. These drones, in order to use them for a law enforcement purpose, like an actual search of a residence or above a residence for clues, we need approval and search warrants and a policy. And there's all sorts of laws that I put in the packet that we have to abide by. The policy I want to point out is a police academy mandated policy. It's a model policy that we've developed to fit our needs, but it has all the required state, federal, and police academy rules that we have to follow. So it's a very structured program, a lot of constraints for law enforcement, but we were seeking your approval to begin this process.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any initial council comment? Counselor Dunn.
What's the origin of I see the state language, from 254501. The language that's in your SOP, draft SOP, originates from Criminal Justice Academy?
The Criminal Justice Academy's Board of Trustees, when you see BOT number after that, those are the guidelines set forth by that Board of Trustees. So these are the regulations that were put in place in accordance with the law, which is over a decade old now.
And the MCJA policy, is that used by other jurisdictions as well?
Any law enforcement agency in the state has to follow the same guidelines.
Okay. And there's I had a question further down. It says that the pilot in control or pilot in command, not sure which it is, will consult with the related prosecutor considering the need for a warrant. Is it reasonable that they would do that, or is it required that they do that prior to flying the drone? Or is there
If we're going to fly a drone for an investigation, a criminal investigation, and unless there's exigent circumstances, we're gonna get a warrant before we fly that drone for that purpose.
And what would an exigent circumstance?
If we had, say we just had a shooting and the person's on the run, that would be exigent for public safety reasons.
And that would be the same as any other action that you would take before contacting a prosecutor? You were to-
Yeah, it's the same process, same procedures.
Thank you.
Counselor Gazzetti.
Thank you. I really appreciate having a copy of all the procedures and being able to read through it. One thing I was really looking for was some assurances that as this drone is traveling perhaps to a site where it might be used for investigation, that the cameras won't be running and it will not be recording. I seem to see that in here, and I just wanted to confirm with you that I'm understanding it correctly.
Yeah, I mean, this is new technology for us. There's different UAVs that operate somewhat differently, so it would kind of determine on the particular UAV that we get in terms of when that camera is activated. But any recordings made of that would be considered evidence, and that we would treat it appropriately. If we gather data that is not evidence, it's gonna be deleted like we would for like normal body camera footage and stuff like that.
Thank you.
Counselor McCorkle.
Thank you. This is more of a curiosity question, as I often have these. I have heard, and I may be wrong, that there are limits related to drones and BIW. How would that be impacted?
I'm not the master on airspace control and federal areas. That would be something that if we get this program, the pilots that would have that FAA training, and they would know the rules and regulations there.
Counselor Dunn.
It's probably premature for you to have an answer, but is there any opportunity that the cameras, which will have audio and video, could be integrated into our body and future vehicle-based camera system? So that you get that integrated time recording?
There probably is technology out there. I don't know what the cost of that technology is. The particular UAVs that we've been looking at do not talk. It's a standalone. You have to land the drone, and you can get the recording that way. It depends on the type of UAV. But the technology is rapidly increasing, and there's drones as first responders in some cities where they'll send a drone out to do the first responder instead of a patrol unit going out. So yes, I mean, there's definitely potential for that type of stuff, I would imagine.
Are there any circumstances where video footage, video recordings would not come under an evidentiary test?
Anything that's not a criminal investigation, like search and rescue. The footage that we gather is going to fall under the Intelligence Information Act, so everything is like it's not public. It's all constrained to other current rules that we have for what we have for records.
So we don't have to have separate, retention policies for that, for non-evidentiary? There's already something that.
For evidentiary, we have a retention policy
Have
for
that.
statute of limitations.
Yeah,
For miscellaneous stuff, so like if I'm in
Exactly.
my body camera is like, I'm just walking down the street,
yeah.
dealing with something and it captures something, depending what that thing is, we do have a retention schedule in our body camera footage
Okay.
program. It's not part of the academy policy for the UAVs.
Okay. Do you have a policy for what I'm gonna refer to as miscellaneous footage, miscellaneous recordings?
For body camera, yes, we do.
No, for.
There is no requirement for that in the model policy, so we
Okay.
don't have that.
I would like to suggest that we should have a retention and control policy for all recordings. I think it serves us well to be able to say, we retained this or did not retain this for period sub X, even though it was not evidentiary.
So in our policy that we currently have, you're gonna have to document every usage of the UAV.
Okay.
The pilot, the officers involved are gonna write a report. They're gonna say, this is where our flight path, this is what we did, time and date. All that's gonna be collected in there. In that investigation, any footage captured as evidence will be certainly retained for the specific, depending on the misdemeanor, felony, how long it needs to be. That will be retained. Miscellaneous stuff, well, the policies, we don't need it, it's gonna get deleted immediately.
Okay, so so the policies you don't keep for any reason.
Correct, we don't need it, right. It won't be kept. And I believe that's in the current policy.
Counselor Ambrosino, did you have a
Yes.
question?
Yeah, just wanted to make a comment. So I think I see that outline in section B and C where it talks about restrictions of the UAVs where, for one, in the section C portion about the use of it, shall only be used in those locations where it's deemed reasonable and support the purpose of the deployment. And then also, all audio and visual recordings obtained during that deployment of the UAV, which are deemed unnecessary by the chief of police, shall be destroyed in a manner consistent with agency protocols. So to my understanding, that's where it's outlined. Is that correct, Chief Booth?
Yeah, retention schedule for me is evidence, you have to retain it for the statute of limitations.
Good, thank you.
Counselor McCorkle.
Thank you. I noticed that these may not be deployed without the knowledge and approval of the chief of police or you. Are there other tools that your officers have access to that have the same requirement, or will this sort of be a new thing for the department?
This will be new, it's specific for UAV use, so this is the way the law was written for that, like I have to approve all usage. After you give me permission, I have to approve all usage. So, I may approve, according to the policy, like, if it's exigent circumstances and they can't get a hold of me, then my next chain of command would be able to approve that. It's just so we have extra oversight so that there's no misuse of the program and the device itself.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Is there any, I'm gonna move to a public comment before we come back to any counselor comment. Is there any public comment on this matter? Okay, seeing none, any final council comment? Counselor Dunn.
I would just say that I appreciate the work that you've done to create this and explain it. It's important. And also, having a drone feels to me like it creates an additional training and skill path for the patrol officers, so that we're continually learning, we're trying to keep up with new technologies, and those technologies that will help us in our work in Bath.
Any other final council comment? Counselor McCorkle.
Thank you. What are the costs of the drones you're looking at, and is this something that you would then have to request in your budget for the next fiscal year?
Yeah, recent searches, the drone, the UAV that Sagadoc has, the UAV that the state police have, they have a couple different ones, but the ones that we've seen are between $3,000 and $5,000. So they're relatively inexpensive. If you want more options on them or larger ones, then they cost increase there. But they have the technology is incredible how fast it's growing, and there is cost associated, but we're looking at that user level $3,000 to $5,000 one to start. We would have to go through a capital request for a larger purchase.
Thank you.
Okay. If there is not any other final council comment, it looks like we're ready to move to a roll call vote.
Counselor Ambrosino?
Yes.
Counselor Marks?
Yes.
Counselor Gazzetti?
Yes.
Counselor Nordman?
Yes.
Counselor Dunn?
Yes.
Counselor Deshant?
Yes.
Counselor McCorkle?
Yes.
And Counselor Mansfield Pryor?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, next up, we have item number 2025-99. This is a resolution. It is an amendment, a proposed amendment to the Bath Development Corporation bylaws. Do we have a motion to put this item on the floor?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, motion is on the floor. I am going to turn, I see Misty Parker, our Director of Economic and Community Development back there. Misty, were you prepared to come give us a brief overview? I think it's fairly explanatory in our packets, but I think Misty's here to fill us in.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, City Council. I am here before you tonight with a request from the Bath Development Corporation to amend their bylaws to expand the terms of their current members. Right now, after they have served 3 terms in total, they have termed out and need to take a 2-year hiatus. Given the nature of the work that they do specifically around property redevelopment, specifically I believe they were reenacted several years ago to facilitate the redevelopment of the former Morse High School. Those types of projects take a long time, and as we can see from this current situation, that definitely has been the case. What the committee has found is that they have lost members that have the institutional knowledge of the early work of the process to put the property go through a public process, initiate redevelopment plans for it, and so on and so forth. And so where we have members that have already termed out that are still willing and able and want to continue this work, unfortunately they are not able to. And so the recommendation is that this be amended to 3-year terms, that they can then be consecutive as well and not have a terms out. And in addition to that, one of the considerations that they have also recommended is to ensure that there is an application process for those renewals. One of the questions that was raised was how to ensure that it's still the right balance of people on these committees and ensure that they're doing good work and a best fit for this. And so that renewal application process and continuing to go through having to reapply ensures that council is reappointing them and having that review necessary. So if there are any questions about that, happy to answer.
Councilor DeChant.
Thank you. So what I think I heard you say, and I did read this, is 6 years is perceived to not be long enough to have, because isn't it 3, no, I'm sorry, right now it's two 2-year terms.
It is 3 2-year terms,
Okay,
the initial
6,
term, and
okay.
then they can renew twice.
Okay, my question is, I guess my concern is, I don't want to see that these are inherited roles that just go on forever, because I think new information and new perspectives are valid. And with the example of the Morse High School redevelopment, which has had considerable lag time, the information that we did 6 years ago maybe is dated. So the institutional history just means that things change. So I'm not really sure that term limit thing speaks to me. So I don't know, is there something that I'm missing on that? Because
Yeah, one of the things that the board reviewed was other committees in the city, and many of them did not have term limits.
But isn't this a different entity than other committees? Doesn't it have a 501c3 to it?
It does,
And
correct.
doesn't it, that even breeds more to kingdoms and queendoms, to me.
That's, yeah.
Any other council comment? Did you have anything to add, Misty, before I open this up
I do
to
not.
public comment? Okay. Is there any public comment on this item? Okay. Then any final council comment? Councilor Dunn.
So I just want to make sure I understand it, although I've read it and I may not understand it. Are we removing term limits at all, or
Yes.
we're extending it?
So you would be extending from 2-year to 3-year terms
And
and
continue to-
removing the
Okay.
terming out.
And is that consistent with all other city committees?
I believe a majority of them.
Okay. And are there any committees that have term limits, aside from this one?
They all have, terms, but
Sorry,
not term
renewal,
limits, yeah.
renewal
Correct.
limits.
Yes, and just like
committees
any
have
other,
renewal
just like
limits?
any other committee as well, the Bath Development Corporation members would still come back to city council for approval and process. So if city council at some time
Right.
felt like,
Yeah, I
you know, it would
understand
be-
that.
Okay, I
but-
just wanna make sure that's clear for everyone.
Yeah, I understand that, but this isn't, by being a separate, private or public nonprofit, or private nonprofit, it's a 501, it's not a city committee. So while they're then consistent with other city committees, is it appropriate that board members don't term out sometime? I'm not convinced
The only two other like similar committees that I am aware of that are private entities but yet still associated with the city and have incorporated into their bylaws this type of appointment in relationship with the city would be the Customs House and would be Bath Housing. And both of them are not structured in this way with the term limits that I am aware of.
Can I also just add that the other thing that is maybe not quite as exciting as whether or not there are term limits, is that this does include also the recommendation to change the language from a gendered language to gender neutral terms. Add that in there.
Thank you.
Counselor Gazzetti?
Has the Bath Development Court had trouble filling what would be vacant seats due to term limits?
No, they have not. They currently have several open positions that have not been filled.
So they have had trouble because they do have open positions that have not been filled? Is that?
They have enough seats to meet their minimum requirements.
Okay.
But there are still additional seats that could be filled that are general open positions.
Okay, thank you. But they have they have quorum enough to move forward on decision-making, and they haven't had trouble filling those minimum seats in the past?
No, I think the issue that presented this was an active member that termed out, that had interest to continue to participate and was not able to. And I believe this may have come up in the past as well.
Thank you.
Counselor Ambrosino?
Yes, I just wanted to check on the process, but I believe Bath Development Corporation still comes before the Appointment Review Committee, like people that are applying. And even reappointments would still, they talk to the director of the Bath Development Corps or chair for input about that member if they were renewing, and then it would still come before council. So there is chance to not really just reject, but just hold off on allowing a reappointment or an appointment in general. So it still goes through that process. So there is vetting there.
That reappointment and appointment process would be the same as for other committees. Counselor DeChamp?
Thank you. I'll be voting against this for the following reasons. One, I think it's a dangerous precedence to be setting into kingdoms and queendoms of having people, while you are reappointed, the reappointment committee does such a thorough job of trying to make sure that people who are staying in the game, stay in the game. And I think this is just a different animal. It is definitely a 501c3, and it deals with public money. And it concerns me a great deal that people could just be on there forever, and you could create something that is very slanted towards towards property owners. You could slant it the other way. And what I really like about this from its origin, or the brief that I'm aware of it, is that people are appointed, you use your 6 years, or it's 6 years I'm fine with, but just the indefinite engagement in this I find very concerning. So I'll be voting against it.
Is there any other final Counselor Mansfield-Prior?
Thank you, Chair Johnson. This isn't something that I was concerned about, but I'm concerned after hearing Counselor DeChamps' comments. I do feel it's really important to change the gendered language. So I'm feeling a little bit torn right now, actually.
Counselor Ambrosino?
Just to follow up, what would the council's will be? Like, would there be another number of years, or to give more flexibility, or to keep it as is? I'm just curious. What is everyone?
I don't think
Yeah, I'm not sure if anyone can answer generally, but like, what is the wish of the council if we don't accept this tonight?
You have two eager counselors, I think, ready to weigh in.
I'm waiting.
Counselor Dunn, do you want to start?
I would say that what I would like to see happen is that we amend this by a motion to remove the changes from Article 6 in the red line, so leave Article 6 unchanged, and ask that a group, not sure who would do this, sorry, go and figure out how this works, this particular sort of development agency works in other municipalities. I wanna know how someone else does it. So I would say remove the language and proceed with the degendering changes, the they, thems, sorry, and let that part go through. And I can make that motion after somebody else, after my colleagues comment.
Do you want to weigh in on that, Counselor DeChant?
I do. While I love the idea of a committee to explore, that's necessarily not my thing at this point. I think that I could be into, again, the question was posed. I could be into extending it from 4 to 6 years. I could definitely into changing the gender language, and I oppose the unlimited term limits. But if we wanted a committee to study it, that's okay too.
I didn't say it had to be the committee. I mean, they could study themselves and say, they could look around amongst themselves.
Counselor McCorkle?
Thank you. I would, I'm not sure that I don't know how I feel about the term limits piece, but I do think if we are going to not accept this in full, but do in part, I would suggest that we keep the change to 3-year terms instead of 2-year terms. Would say we would keep the changing from 2 to 3 years, keep the removing of the gendered language, and perhaps not change the removal of term limits.
Is that a motion?
Somebody
Do you want to make that? Second.
Okay.
I heard a second.
Wait.
Okay,
Who's making the motion?
I will make a motion, I suppose. I will make a motion to amend the, let's see, what is the language that we're even looking at?
Article 6.
Amend the changes to Article 6 to reject the suggestion that each director may succeed themselves for a 3-year term by reapplying, and instead retain the original language. Well, I suppose the original language will need to be changed for 2 additional 3-year terms, and may be eligible after still a 2-year hiatus.
Okay. Second? Is that a motion? So I can second?
Yeah, that's the motion.
You got that?
Mm-hmm. Got it.
Now, is there any council comment on that motion? Or do we want to move right to a roll call vote on the motion?
One quick
Counselor
comment.
Ambrosino.
Yeah, just one quick comment. Was that in addition to the language that's here about a 2-year hiatus? I don't know if I'm reading correctly in the section too.
The 2-year hiatus would remain
Yeah,
in
correct.
place
Okay.
under
So
my
you don't
amendment.
want to nix that. You're just talking.
No.
Okay, good. That's it.
Then we, I think, can move to a roll call vote on that motion.
Correct. Counselor Mansfield Pryor.
Yes.
Counselor McCorkle.
Yes.
Counselor DeChant.
Yes.
Counselor Dunn.
Yes.
Counselor Nordman.
Yes.
Counselor Gazzetti.
Yes.
Counselor Marks.
Yes.
And Counselor Ambrosino.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We accepted the amendment. Do we need to?
Yep.
Okay.
Ready? Counselor Ambrosino.
Yes.
Counselor Marks.
Yes.
Counselor Gazzetti.
Yes.
Counselor Nordman.
Yes.
Counselor Dunn.
Yes.
Counselor DeChant.
Yes.
Counselor McCorkle.
Yes.
Counselor Mansfield Pryor.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, then we are on item number 2025-100. This is a resolution supporting the creation of a Maine Climate Super Fund. Is there a motion to put this item on the floor?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. I am going to turn to, let's see, to start with Counselor Gazzetti, who's going to give us a little bit of an overview of background about this. And then I believe we also have a representative here from the Environmental Priorities Coalition can share some more information.
Thank you, Chair Johnson. So this agenda item is a result of the memo that was presented by Councilor Mansfield Pryor at our September 3rd meeting. That memo included a number of potential considerations and recommendations, one of them being to support a bill at the legislature to create a climate superfund. And the recommendations specifically were at the council's discretion. The council may wish to invite a speaker to speak more about this particular issue. And then the council may want to consider passing a resolution to adopt in support of this climate superfund. So tonight's presentation and the draft resolution is an effort to move forward on that recommendation from the Climate Action Commission. And the draft resolution language is in the agenda packet, and we do have somebody here to present.
Thank you. And I believe we have, is it Jackson Chadwick? Okay, from the Environmental Priorities Coalition. Thank you for coming tonight.
Thank you, Chair Johnson and City Councilors. My name is Jackson Chadwick. I am the Advocacy Director at an organization called Maine Youth for Climate Justice. But tonight I'm here on behalf of the Environmental Priorities Coalition. The EPC is a coalition of 41 organizations across the state, ranging from environmental and conservation groups to public health and veterans organizations, united in advancing forward-looking environmental policy. One of our top legislative priorities ahead of the 2026 legislative session is a proposal known as the Climate Superfund Act. And we've been reaching out to municipalities across Maine for a couple of reasons. The first is to share information about this bill and invite public discussion about what it could mean if enacted for communities like Bath. And second, as Councilor Gazzetti mentioned, we're working with a number of cities and towns to pass resolutions in support of this bill, as the towns of Rockland and Yarmouth have already done so. As I'm sure all of you know, Maine is on the front lines of a changing climate, extensive droughts, such as the one we are in right now, and increasingly intense storms, which are putting real pressure not just on our infrastructure, but on our local budgets. Maine recently enacted LD1 earlier this year to improve storm preparedness. However, that law only allocates funding to communities for 2 years. That was $39 million in funding on top of $60 million the legislature appropriated for storm recovery efforts in 2024. So in short, we often end up reacting to storms rather than trying to get ahead of the problem, and that is why a climate superfund bill has been brought forth in the Maine legislature. To speak briefly about what this bill is and how it would work, I wanted to mention that this is modeled after the federal Superfund program, which was established in 1980, and that finances the cleanup of hazardous waste sites across the country, including here in Maine at the old Loring Air Force Base in Aroostook County. And that is based on the legal principle that polluters should pay for damages they cause. And the Climate Superfund bill applies the same principle to climate change here in Maine and would require the state of Maine to assess the financial impact of climate-related damages in the state between a certain time period. Also under this bill, major fossil fuel companies that have operated in the state would be required to pay a one-time fee for damages they have caused. That fee will help compensate the state for that harm and ensure that Maine taxpayers are not left responsible to shoulder the costs. This bill also explicitly exempts any small or locally owned and operated Maine business from having to contribute to that one-time fee. Funds collected would go directly towards storm adaptation projects across our state, and just to list a few examples of what those could be upgrading stormwater systems, retrofitting roads, causeways, bridges, other transportation infrastructure, modernizing our wastewater treatment systems, and more. For a little bit of additional context, Vermont passed this legislation last year following the catastrophic flooding they experienced in 2023. And this similar legislation also passed in New York last year. We believe that for a city like Bath, this is a fiscally responsible approach and solution. Across the state, a lot of municipal budgets are stretched really thin right now, and the need for infrastructure improvements is an ongoing need and one that will not go away. And so this bill, if enacted, would help ensure that Bath's taxpayers are not left to bear the full cost of adapting to storms. I also want to note that this resolution is non-binding and simply represents an expression of the city's support to our state lawmakers, showing that there is some strong local support for a proactive solution to storm preparedness, and one that does not come at the long-term expense of taxpayers. And before I conclude, I'd just like to note that the EPC has been circulating a statewide petition in support of this bill. And to date, that has received thousands of signatures, including from about 155 people here in the city of Bath. And I'd be happy to provide more information or clarify any of my remarks. And thank you for letting me speak tonight.
Thank you. Do we have any initial council comment on this item? Councilor Marks.
Thank you, Chair Johnson. You mentioned similar legislation in Vermont and New York, and I'm just wondering what has been the reaction and the result of that from the fossil fuel companies and the federal government, or where do things stand?
In terms of where things stand in Vermont and New York, fossil fuel companies did sue both of those states for trying to implement that, which was not a surprise in the slightest. Lawmakers put forth that bill, and lawmakers put forth the Climate Superfund legislation in Vermont and New York with full awareness that big fossil fuel companies would sue them for trying to implement that. And earlier this year, the Federal Department of Justice filed separate lawsuits in both of those states. There has not been a lot of progress in the courts on either of those cases, and it's highly unlikely that there will be a resolution in either by the end of this year.
Councilor Dunn.
What's the status of 1870 in Augusta?
Great question. Yeah. So 1870 had a public hearing in early May of this year. It was introduced very late in the legislative session, and so lawmakers carried it over in the Environment and Natural Resources Committee. So this has not made it to the House or Senate floors yet. And so when the legislature reconvenes in January, it will start back up in the Environment Committee before moving forward.
Has it had any fiscal review at the state level yet?
It has not, and that's partly because it hasn't made it out of
Carried
committee
over.
yet. Yeah,
Thank you.
of course.
Councilor Gazzetti.
Thank you. You compared this to the EPA's Hazardous Waste Superfund, which passed in the 1980s and is still active today. Did that legislation face resistance from polluters at that time?
It did, and that has faced ongoing legal challenges for about 45 years now, and that program is still intact and helping communities across our state today.
Yes, if I could just comment, there's no doubt that the people who would be asked to pay for causing the damage that we've received would resist having to be held accountable for that.
Is there any?
1980, 45 years ago. Right?
I'm with you. Is there any, I'm going to move to public comment. Is there any public comment on this item? Other than lamenting how quickly 40 years goes.
Wow.
All right, I'll come back for final council comment. Councilor Dunn.
I would say that I have no problem supporting it, understanding that this is aspirational, that this shows that we recognize some of the major causes. Polluters pollute. We also create a demand. If we think about it as much about the polluters pay principle as the legislation that now affects, I think, plastic and disposable bottles, producer pays movement, which has gone through lots of iterations in many states. I would prefer to think of it, or additionally think of it as producer pays, because the pollution is here, we already are suffering from it, but moving forward, recognize that producers of fossil fuels can be forced to do more to make things cleaner, but we also have to continue working on the demand. If we don't reduce our demand, it's a little hard to say that we shouldn't produce it.
Councilor DeChamps?
Thank you. I have several comments about this and concerns. I appreciate the exuberance and the thoughtfulness that's gone into bringing it to this point. I have expressed some of my concerns with folks that it necessarily hasn't made the daylight, so I'll use this opportunity now. As a refresher, the resolution part of it is just vocabulary check. A local government resolution is a formal declaration of a governing body, such as a city council, here we are, that expresses its opinion, will, intent, or particular matter, often in a temporary or special purpose. Unlike an ordinance, which we deal with frequently, this is a permanent, which is a permanent local law. The resolution typically addresses a less permanent administrative issue or serves as a statement of opinion and non-binding, which our presenter mentioned. What's happening here is, I mean, I spent a little bit of time in the state government. I spent a little bit of time in the halls. And 1870 is carried over and was largely carried over because it was scheduled late in the session, and it was carried over because, partially because of the resistance and the litigation that faces in Vermont and New York. I think this resolution is way over our skis and what we can do as a municipality, even in our opinion, and non-binding opinions. Its constitutional challenges, the federal preemption, a core argument in the state climate Superfund laws are preempted by the Federal Clean Air Act, which is argued to be the sole federal authority for regulating greenhouse gas emissions. There's a Commerce Clause. Lawsuits claim that these laws violate the Commerce Clause by discriminating against out-of-state producers and unlawfully burden interstate and foreign commerce. There's a due process challenge to this, violate the 14th Amendment due to process clause by imposing harsh and retroactive penalties for lawful emissions that were lawful at the time. That's 40-some years ago. I'm not really sure. I mean, I'm not even gonna get to that minutia with vague and unfair calculations. Furthermore, going into the exact resolution, there's a whole lot of whereases here, and I could probably counter most of them. Number 8, they're not numbered. The Climate Superfund will help Maine determine its true cost of dealing with climate changes. Possibly, litigation costs are enriching lawyers, and consumers will have the aftermath of having to pay higher energy costs. That's just how it works. It's spread among energy users. Payment for large oil and natural and gas corporations, absolutely, with taxpayers' monies, but the payouts take years, and there's litigations going on. In Vermont and New York, I don't argue that it's gonna take a while, but I do mean to say it will happen at some point, and these projects, then, the ones that are really important, are gonna remain unfunded. And whereas the Superfund program is make its polluters pay, but the Federal Clear Air Act is in place for that. Successfully enacted in Vermont and New York, yeah, unless you pay attention to the litigation that's gonna be happening and the costs that go along with that. So I mean, Bath's risk here is a proclamation to invite political liability without legal leverage. I know it's non-binding. I believe in resolutions. I believe in supporting and articulating measures to some extent. But I think as a municipality, we need to stay in our lane. And there are a lot of other things that came out of the environmental priorities that I look forward to discussing.
Any other council comment? Okay. Then I think it sounds like we are ready for a final roll call vote.
Counselor Mansfield Pryor.
Yes.
Counselor McCorkle.
Yes.
Counselor DeShant.
No.
Counselor Dunn.
Yes.
Counselor Nordman.
Yes.
Counselor Gazzetti.
Yes.
Counselor Marks.
I'm gonna abstain.
Okay. Counselor Ambrosino.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Then we move on to item number 2025-101. This is the order for the approval of election warrant to notify residents of the city of Bath of the state, RSU1, and municipal elections to be held on Tuesday, November 4th, 2025. Do we have a motion to put this item on the floor?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, motion is on the floor. I will turn this over to Darcy Wheeler, our city clerk.
Okay, we have 3 elections being held on November 4th. That would be the state referendum election with the Citizens Initiative. It will also be the municipal election for the RSU1 Board of Directors. There are 3 separate contests on that ballot. And then it will also be for Ward 5, 7, and at-large council seats serving 3-year terms on November 4th.
Okay. Is there any initial council comment on this item? Councilor McCorkle.
Thank you. To clarify, for the RSU1 election, only one of those will be voted on by Bath voters.
That is not correct.
No?
Now, they all are voted on because it's an RSU,
Huh. I didn't know
and
that.
everybody has the opportunity to vote for everyone
Thank you.
in all of those towns.
Councilor Dunn.
Darcy knows this is one of my favorite items of the year. Local administration of elections by each state is at the heart of our country's safe, secure, and decentralized elections. A couple of questions. Who registers voters?
The registrar of voters, which would be myself and my deputies, which would be Chris Taylor and Amanda Yanko. On election day, there are other deputy registrars that are sworn in for that task.
And what are the requirements to register to vote, either in advance or on the day of?
Okay,
election?
in order to register to vote, you need a government-issued ID, either a driver's license or an ID, or your social security card.
And just briefly, because I know there are a lot of steps in it, how do you handle absentee and early votes?
Okay, it's all called absentee voting. We call it in the office absentee in-person voting, because then it kind of clarifies that gray area up. You can come into our office now. It is open. We opened it up Monday morning to in-person vote, to request your ballot and take it with you. There is a small form that you have to fill out. But you can cast your vote there. It'll be put in your envelope, just like you would be if we mailed it to you. We hold on to those envelopes. We keep them in the vault until election day. I bring them to the polls, and that's where we'll be processing them this year. We are not doing early processing. I think we can handle it the day of, and we'll be doing it then.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I don't see any other council comments, so is there any public comment on this item? Any election questions? Your expert is here. All right, any final council comment or questions? Okay, then let's move to a roll call vote.
Counselor Ambrosino.
Yes.
Counselor Marks.
Yes.
Counselor Gazzetti.
Yes.
Counselor Nordman.
Yes.
Counselor Dunn.
Yes.
Counselor DeShant.
Yes.
Counselor McCorkle.
Yes.
And Counselor Mansfield Pryor.
Yes.
And anybody that's not running, if you'd like to help me, and anybody out there, give me a call.
All right, item number 2025-102. This is an ordinance, chapter 8A, the General Assistance Ordinance. Maximums for October 1, 2025 to September 30th, 2026. Do I have a motion to put this item on the floor?
So moved.
Second.
Who was the second?
Julie.
Okay.
Okay. So this motion is on the floor, and I will turn to Darcy again.
Okay, on my other hat, these here are the maximums for general assistance that the state provides to us. We follow these guidelines, we've been doing this for years, and they work well. The appendix A through H has to be updated each year. That will be posted in our general assistance office, as well as the recovery residences were updated this year as well. And you'll notate the changes on the ones that were in your packets.
Thank you, Darcy.
You're welcome.
Is there any initial council comment on this item? Councilor McCorkle?
Thank you. Clerk Wheeler, can you just talk a little bit about general assistance, what it is, how often one might get it, how one receives it?
General assistance is a program that is run by the municipalities for people that need assistance for housing, food, things like that. It's not a first place to go program. It's a place that you need to follow application rules, you need to apply for it, and it's not always guaranteed. And there are other opportunities that we have that we can point people in if they don't qualify, that we can put them in certain areas. They're welcome to apply online. We have the application up online if they think that they could qualify and want to try to qualify for general assistance. Heating, housing, food, things like that.
And these maximums are per what?
Depending on how they fall on the chart, they're either per person or per.
Sorry, I meant per time, like per year?
Yes.
With the exception of, it looks like the utilities, which is on a weekly or monthly basis?
Correct. So it would be either per week, per month, per year.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Councilor Gazzetti?
To follow up on Councilor McCorkle's question, I kind of had the same question, and that's only because if you look at Appendix E, for example, everything is clearly labeled as per month or per week, with dollar signs, or gallons, whereas Appendix A and Appendix B and Appendix C don't have labels.
Okay.
So it's just
And that's just the chart that we've been using for years, so I can look at cleaning that up
yeah,
a
just
little
kind
bit,
of
so-
clarified the
Yeah.
units of measurements, for
Definitely,
lack of a better
definitely.
term.
I'll notate that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other council comments? Any public comment on this item? Let's bring it back to any final council comment.
I guess.
Yeah, Councilor McCorkle?
I have a question about the mileage rate. Does the state not follow the federal mileage rate? I haven't checked it recently, but I know last time I did see the federal mileage rate was much higher than that.
Let me look at this first before I may have not changed that in this document. I will double check that. This form that I put in your packet is to clean it up from what the maximum sheet is that they send us. So if I put that in your packet, that may be more clear for you. I just have used what's been used in the past.
Okay.
But it did say no change, so I will double check that.
And
And this will come for second passage, so I will have those changes
Thank you.
for you for the second passage.
And
That's
just
gonna
on
be my
a,
question.
just on a quick look, the state does not follow the federal.
Oh, you did check it, thank you.
All right, any other council comments on this item? Seeing none, let's move to a vote.
Counselor Mansfield Pryor.
Yes.
Counselor McCorkle.
Yes.
Counselor DeShant.
Yes.
Counselor Dunn.
Yes.
Counselor Nordman.
Yes.
Counselor Gazzetti.
Yes.
Counselor Marks.
Yes.
And Counselor Ambrosino.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, we are on to the item that brings me here tonight. This is number 2025-103. This is an ordinance under Chapter 5 Businesses, Article 16, Short-Term Rental, proposed ordinance. Do we have a motion to put this item on the floor?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, motion is on the floor, and we have Misty Parker as joining us again, Director of Economic and Community Development, to give us a bit of an overview. I know you all have information in your packets, but it's a new topic, I think, for everyone, and I'm sure there will be questions.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the City Council. I am here before you tonight with the proposed ordinance to regulate short-term rentals. As you are aware, in March 28, 2024, the Housing Subcommittee at the time, which is now a permanent housing committee, was before you with a proposal to work with the planning board to develop reasonable recommendations to regulate short-term rentals in the community. They focused on preserving community fabric, ensuring market balance, and create clear enforceable standards. Council found merit in the proposal and directed them to work towards drafting an ordinance for you to consider. Before you tonight is where they landed, but I'd like to provide you with some background regarding how they got here and the rationale behind some of the proposal that is presented tonight. So the committee started with analysis of existing short-term rentals in Bath. They identified approximately 85 short-term rentals, which is about 2% of the housing units here in the community. We have about 4,500 housing units total. These short-term rentals, since they're not regulated locally, it was really through analyzing the best available data. So it is an approximation. The types of short-term rentals were then evaluated to really understand what type of units they are. Are they a room in somebody's primary house that's being rented out, or are they an entire residential unit that's being used as a vacation home? And so the different types of units were then broken down and classified from there. This really helped the committee understand the various types of ways people are offering short-term rentals in the community. They then went and did a lot of research around best practices, existing ordinances in other communities, and short-term rental guidebooks. They consulted with the planning board to identify regulatory tools that can be used to meet policy objectives. Specifically, the planning board then was identified that their realm is within the land use code, and that in the new land use code that is being considered, they made recommendations to allow short-term rentals within all residential units or all residential districts. Specifically, the housing committee was then tasked with taking on the policy aspect of the licensing. They then went and identified the specific things that would be required or should be required in an ordinance if it was considered. They identified the licensing to license short-term rentals. They identified having a cap here in the community to ensure that it stays at a healthy balance. They identified a good neighbor guide to ensure that guests that are staying in these units have appropriate information regarding public safety, local code, sanitation, noise ordinances, things as like where you put your trash, where you park, so on and so forth. Identifying specifically parking plans for the short-term rentals. Since this can be in, a short-term rental could be in a variety of different zoning districts, and the land use code dictates parking standards in general, the committee recognized that they just need to identify for the city where they're telling people to go to ensure that that is followed, and that the ordinance can dictate exactly number of units required based on the district they're in. And occupancy requirement, the number of guests per unit or per bedroom to be outlined in the City of Bath Code. Specifically, the committee since found that the occupancy requirement is based on building codes, and so therefore that is already a requirement of our City of Bath codes and does not necessarily need to be taken into consideration through this separate ordinance, but you will see highlighted in the proposed ordinance a reference to things like the land use code they need to be in compliance with, and other Bath codes like the building code, to ensure that those specific tools people are aware of, that they do apply. From there, at this point, the committee had not drafted anything. I think that's important to note. They really did their research, really evaluated what is here and what may be operating. Then they sought input from various stakeholders. They met with city department heads, specifically police, fire, planning, codes, assessor. Our clerk was invited, but she was not available that day, but has been kept in the loop. And asked for their input about what needs to be considered, what has been their experiences, and identify components that they should be taking into consideration when drafting this ordinance. From there, they did a joint workshop with the planning board in March of this year to provide them an update on what their status of their work, as well as hear from the planning board where their work is headed. They then started their outreach specifically first with a focus group with current short-term rental operators. Based on the information they had collected through their analysis, they did an invitation to all of those properties owners to invite them to a focus group. Folks were then attended this group, and the committee heard from them about things that they were considering, were important to them, how they were currently operating. They proposed some of the items that I just went through regarding licensing, caps, good neighbor guides, parking, occupancy requirements, so on and so forth. I would say this focus group provided a lot of really important information to the committee to really understand how people were operating short-term rentals and helped guide them into their drafting work. Before they started drafting the ordinance, they also held a public meeting for all of the community to ensure that everyone could come in and share their feedback. They went through the same exercise of sharing the different items that they were exploring to consider putting into the ordinance and hear from committee members what they should consider. And then they took all of that information, synthesized it down, and drafted an ordinance. Then they went back to all the interested parties that had participated previously and provided them an opportunity to review the draft and share final feedback on it. From there, they revised it a little bit more and went through to get the ordinance that is before you tonight. So this ordinance would initiate an annual licensing process for all short-term rentals, which would be people offering short-term rentals. People operating short-term rentals in their primary home would be exempt from the licensing, though. So if you have a shared room in your home, this would be exempt. They would be exempt from this ordinance, from this licensing. If you vacated your primary residential home and rented it out for the month that you were gone, as a short-term rental, you would also be exempt because it is your primary home, and the committee recognized that these types of short-term rentals were not the type that needed the focus of a licensing process in this immediate step, and did not want to provide unnecessary barriers for that, and that they were not contributing to an offset of the balance of residential units in the community. The next piece of the ordinance, it would initiate a cap of 65 licenses. This is approximately 1.5% of all residential units. And if 65 sounds a little odd based on how I mentioned we had identified 85 units, to explain that, it essentially is when you break down the number of short-term rentals we estimate that would be exempt because they are people that are offering a short-term rental in their primary home. That brings that number down to 47 short-term rentals that are operating back today that would be eligible for licensing. So about 38 would be exempt from this ordinance. This would allow, the 65 number would enable all current short-term rental operators that are here in the community to receive a license and still offer some new licenses for people that are contemplating short-term rentals or may not have thought about it, but in 6 months recognize that they can do that and there will be room to incorporate new short-term rentals. The ordinance and licensing process, it identifies application requirements that include things like emergency contacts, the good neighbor guides, parking plans, ordinance information. These are all the components that we heard about were important to make sure were documented in some way. They would also then, the ordinance provides a renewal process and criteria for renewal. So licensed operators would be eligible to renew first, and then it would open up to new licenses each year. So that way, those that are operating short-term rentals and are licensed, they wouldn't have to be nervous about the possibility of, am I gonna get a license next year? They would be able, there'd be a 30-day window at the end of the year to be able to get their licenses in, renew it. Anybody that hasn't, come the first of the year, and any low open licenses would be available for everybody else. It also, part of that renewal piece has that specific criteria for renewal. So the code enforcement officer would be responsible for reviewing these renewals of licenses. And then if there had been, for instance, some ongoing issues over the past year and reoccurring violations or challenges, that would be a potential reason to not renew somebody's license. You also see there is an appeal process built in too, because it's important to ensure that if there is a reason that somebody thinks that they have been not allowed to renew unfairly, that they have the ability to vocalize that as well. So, because we do not currently have any sort of licensing process, we cannot definitively say that we know all of the short-term rental operators in the community right now. So the committee has decided that how they would do this to try and ensure that our current operators have the chance to receive the license. They would all be notified from the list that we have. And of course, this would be publicized as well so that people can be aware that are currently operating short-term rentals when the application is available. Additionally, the land use, I already mentioned the land use code currently dictates specific land uses, so things like events or parking and all of these different things. Our land use code already regulates those, and so therefore that is embedded into the ordinance that they have to comply with the land use code and other municipal codes. The fee that is proposed is $100 per unit. This was established based on what other business licenses are currently offered in the city. And then the housing committee, it is built into the ordinance that the housing committee would review biannually unless directed earlier by the council. So the housing committee would have the opportunity every other year to review, how is this ordinance working? Are there any things we need to recommend to council to improve this? But if council does identify something in the meantime, you always have the ability, like any other committee, to direct them to look into something and propose a revision if necessary. So that's a lot of information. They tried to make a ordinance proposal as clear and concise, tries to address all the major concerns and things and still present a reasonable process that would allow short-term rentals to continue to operate here and ensure that things are improving and a manner that creates a healthy, balanced housing committee. So if you have any questions, please let me know.
Thank you, Misty. I'll just add that it has been a pleasure for me to have served on the housing committee while we've been working on this for approximately all of 2025. It has been a long, involved process, and I feel like it really could be held up as best practices of how to draft an ordinance, how to get community feedback and information, and has just been a pleasure to work on. Is there any council comment here? Councilor McCorkle.
Thank you. I have a few questions about the language in the draft that I don't think rise to the level of an amendment, but maybe need to be adjusted. So maybe it does. I don't know how the process, but in section 3, I'll start. It says shared rooms as defined in this ordinance are exempt from this licensing requirement when the home is their primary residence. 2 pieces there. One, when it says there, I believe it should say the owner's primary residence. Otherwise, we're not referring to anybody there. I also think this does not make clear that primary residence, short-term rentals that you mentioned where you rent out when the residence, when the owner is away, is also exempt. It just names shared rooms, so I think we need to add that other exemption. Under section 4, any applicable building seems misplaced in that sentence. It should probably go, I don't know where it should go or if it needs to be there, but that I put a question mark next to. And then in section 5A, I have a question about should it be the contact person or their designee? Because I mean, presumably this, if it's one person for the whole year, they may, go on vacation or be unreachable at one point. And so I don't know if there's a process to update the city if that's going to be the case. And then it's just a question about can respond. Do we mean can answer a phone call, be on site? What is that response supposed to be? I think it's a big difference. Expecting someone to answer the phone and call back within an hour versus being there within an hour.
So great questions and comments about the emergency contact information. This was one thing that was cited by city staff as being a challenge just with housing units in general, not just short-term rentals, but specifically around short-term rentals, was ensuring that they know who to contact if something comes up, especially in an emergent situation, and that oftentimes short-term rentals are registered as an LLC or something like that, and so it's a little more difficult to find who that contact information is. This was originally drafted as having them respond on site within 1 hour, and in talking with more with short-term rental operators and property managers for them, that really it was more reasonable to respond within 1 hour, and then they would facilitate a response from there. And so in that case, usually they are identifying their property manager, that point of contact that's overseeing them, so even if they are on vacation, that it's still handled.
Yeah,
I believe, if I could just jump in, I believe also codes weighed in on that. That
Yes.
if there was a phone call, if it was something that was appropriate for a phone call, it would be a phone call. If they really needed someone in person, it would be at the discretion of code.
Yeah, that sounds fine to me. I just wanted to clarify whether it was on site or by phone. I still have questions about the contact person being available all the time. So I expect if you hire a property management company, then yes, there would be someone designated. But if you don't, then what if I'm not reachable by phone because I'm in another country, for example. I don't know if we need to be that specific, but I don't want someone to be dinged that I guess it does designate local contact in the next section, so maybe it's fine under or not the next in 6A. It does. There's 6A sub C mentions the city is able to reach the operator or a designated local contact. So maybe it's there that just clarifies my question.
The intent was to try to make it flexible and work with people so that we could have somebody available that could be contacted in that rare instance of an emergency, while also not making it over cumbersome for them.
Thank you.
Counselor Dunn?
I had two questions, one of which I think I know the answer to, but Section 3 exempts a room in a house. But does that indicate that it's a room with 5 beds, so it's 5 people renting a room, 2 bunk beds and a couch, or a single bed? And the reason, it sounds almost trivial.
It is not trivial at all.
It's not, because it's people
It
in a
happens.
residence. Yeah.
Absolutely. So that is why we have building codes and occupancy standards that are handled through building codes. And so that would dictate, if somebody is renting a room in their home, that specific bedroom by code, based on the size of that bedroom, would designate how many people are allowed.
So
you could not have a bed, 2 bunk beds and so on in a very tiny room.
Right,
that's
but I
quarter
could
of the
take my 3rd floor, which is an open, finished attic, for example, put bunk beds in it, and call that a bedroom.
Only if it meets the building code standards for a
Sure.
bedroom that has egress.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
egress and such out, I can't.
Mm-hmm.
My house is a bad example. But, it would be possible for someone with a large room to designate that as a bedroom.
Yes.
And it would comply with the building standards, but would not comply with a limitation of people in a residence in a residential neighborhood.
I believe it would still need to comply with that. So if you're
Yeah.
saying, could they turn the living room into a bedroom, that may not be possible.
Why?
Based on the building codes, and I'm not a code enforcement officer, I'm not certified as a building inspector,
No,
so I
I
can't,
understand.
but
Just
we
about
did
to
have
say
lengthy
that.
discussion with our code enforcement officer who is certified in these things, because these were items that were brought up as specific concerns by residents, and we wanted to really understand what restrictions are, and that was the direction that he gave us, was that in order, occupancy is determined by specifically the number of bedrooms that are permitted by building code, that have to meet certain dimensional requirements, certain egress requirements, and things of that nature, and therefore that's what they would only be allowed to use.
Okay, I don't expect you to be able to I'm not sure that I understand it, and maybe it's a call I need to have with Adam. My second question was, you can use your primary home while you're away for the winter, for example. How many times can you be away? Could you be at home for 1 month, and then away again for 6 months?
The committee opted not to regulate that level of detail. Essentially, what was found was that we have a number of people that it is their primary home here in Bath. They are Bath residents, and they do go away for a number of months. Some of that time they may do a short-term rental through their house. Some, it's just for a short period of time, some the entire period of time, but it varied. The rationale behind how people are utilizing short-term rentals is varied. That many of them are utilizing that income to offsetting their taxes. They may be on fixed income, supporting them throughout the year. So based on the number of things that they heard, they decided that as long as this is their primary home, where they reside most of the time, that is where they would be exempt.
I'm concerned about that, and then I'll stop, I apologize. I'm concerned about that because I go away for 6 months. I have someone there 1 month, empty a day. The next month, empty a day. I'm running a short-term rental. I just happen to not live in my house, so I'm concerned about that choice.
I can speak to that a little bit, Councilor Dunn. The intent behind what the committee was trying to address was the issue of units that are being taken off the long-term rental or owner-occupied market. So if somebody's lives in their house most of the time, that's their primary residence, we didn't want to overregulate. So we wanted to make sure that what we were targeting was somebody renting out their place so that it's no longer available to a Bath resident as a long-term rental or as something that they could purchase.
So this would not supplant that.
Correct.
Because it would be chunks.
If someone goes on sabbatical and wants to rent their house out while they're away, we really didn't want to regulate that. Yep. Councilor Gazzetti?
In that same vein, because I also feel like it helps address some of Councilor Dunn's questions about the various sizes of shared rooms, and then I know Councilor McCorkle said this already, but the fact that shared rooms is defined here, and then it would also be part of a primary residence, but a primary residence isn't explicitly exempted from this ordinance. It raises a lot of questions because the committee decided to define shared room, but then didn't talk about primary residence anywhere. So I agree that that's a very kind of confusing aspect of this, and I would certainly want to see like an actual amendment before second passage, for example. And then my only other question is, or I should say at this moment, is about the licensing requirements and when they would go into effect, like, and just kind of the process of when people who are currently doing this would be expected to submit an application and move forward in that way.
Yes, we could definitely come back with an amendment that clarifies that piece. I think that is important, and I'm sure the committee will agree as well. For the process, assuming that on second passage and a public hearing would be held at your next regularly scheduled meeting, which is November 5th, it would be approximately 3 weeks after that the ordinance would be in effect. So during that 3-week time, we would prepare the application, make sure everything is on the website, everything is clear and up to date, and notify people of when that application may be available based on that information that we have about current short-term renters that are currently operating there. We'd also look to doing other communication methods to broaden the awareness to reach other people we might not have contact information for.
Just to follow up on that.
Councilor DeSantis, yeah.
So they, would the expectation be though that they not need a license until January 1, 2026?
Yep, that is
Okay.
correct.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
and so that, but we want to make sure that they have the time to get that license in place.
Councilor Marks, did you have?
Thank you. Yeah, I'm just following up on some of the comments that have been made, and I guess let me back up and just say, you know, I think this is great, and it's clear that, you know, at the first 2-year review, if not sooner, I'm sure we'll learn some things that will require some changes. But I'm very pleased with this, especially with the modifications that have already been offered. And one additional one, in section 4, it says compliance with land use regulations. Isn't it usual in something like this that there would be cross-references? I mean, it just feels like kind of a gotcha that there's this, you know, whole other thing of code, go read the whole thing. Wouldn't we want to mention specific sections that have been brought up already tonight, like, you know, what constitutes a bedroom or an egress and all of that thing? Wouldn't that be something that would be normal to list there? What parts were relevant, or am I?
I think it would eventually become a very long list, and it's also very specific to the district that somebody's property may be in, or how they're using their short-term rental. And so therefore, you know, just like any other business that's operating in the city, it's always best first to check with the code enforcement office to determine what specifically applies to what you plan to do and where your property is located.
And I will say that when people apply for any of these business licenses through my office, I point them directly to code so they can get firsthand information as to what they need to comply, and they'll discuss with them before I even have them fill out the application. It's only the fair thing to do so that they get the straight answer from the people that manage that.
Absolutely. I mean, I can give you an example, because just like any business, everything is very nuanced and unique to that specific business, no matter how much we try to streamline things. And so, you know, for instance, we currently have an ADU, and what looks like an ADU operating as a short-term rental, but it's actually considered an additional unit within the primary residence. And so I would hate to see that person come in and, you know, start the application process, not talk to code, and go through everything only to find out that it wasn't necessary or something like that. So we always, the same thing if something wasn't allowed to get that far down the road and then find out they're not able to do it.
Do we have any other council comments before I open it up to public comment? Because I know we have at least one person. Councilor McCorkle?
Thank you. I have a question under the enforcement and penalties piece. The second sentence sort of is about folks who, well, I guess I'm curious about people who operate unlicensed short-term rentals. And I think that is sort of maybe the last sentence, but it's vague, and I'm curious what we are thinking, you know, those other enforcement actions might be. What's the rationale behind leaving it this vague? If you could speak to that.
Yeah, absolutely. So this language specifically was worked out with our code enforcement officer, you know, that this is authorizing him to have the authority to enforce this specific ordinance. Also, there may be other violations specific to the land use code or the building code, which would need to be directed through their violation sections and enforcement sections. So specifically, he did not recommend defining too specifically what that would look like, so that it could be responded to in time. and based on each individual situation. As for unlicensed, short-term rentals, I think the thing is that, we're not gonna be going out and like surveying neighborhoods or anything like that and actively looking for short-term rentals. But as with currently, if an issue pops up and the code enforcement officer is made aware of, they would conduct an investigation just like any other potential code enforcement violation and would look into it and then address, that based on what is found. So, it may be through the land use code, it may be through this licensing process.
Thank you.
Let's open this up for public comment. Is there any public comment on this item? Come right on up to the podium. Thank you.
Yeah, again, Scott Dunn, 904 Washington Street. First of all, just absolutely kudos to everyone who's worked on this. It's unbelievable, the professionalism, how well people listen to us. So, Missy, Chairperson Johnson, it's just phenomenal what's happened here. And as a owner, I mean, I want something like this because it helps make sure all the units are up to snuff. If there's some units out there that aren't up to snuff, it brings us all down. So, it's a fabulous document. Really, there's only like one major point I have, and it's your point really about the emergency contacts. I understand the thought process behind it, just how realistic it is. So, and this week's kind of odd for me. We've had a property manager for 4 years who's lived in town, 5-minute drive away from her house. We're changing a new one. Our old one is moving out of state. She's a 5-minute walk to her house. So when we're looking for a new property manager, the biggest thing is, can you respond? Now, the company we're going through, they have 8 people in the general area, so the chances of them being able to respond to our unit, I mean, it's like 95% chance they could be there in an hour, maybe more. But it's like any other business. If you have 10 clients and all 10 clients have an issue at the same time, unless you have 10 people on call 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365, you can't guarantee it. And I know that's not what, I mean, I know that's kind of being thought into this here, but it's just, how realistic is it to expect someone to be there in an hour? So I had just a couple suggestions. And I'll say, I should add that in section 6, city, how you can lose your license if somebody didn't get back to you in a reasonable amount of time. So on the emergency contact information on the first page, the primary individual has to be reached all the time, respond within 1 hour in the event of emergency. I would suggest something like be able to respond within a reasonable amount of time, generally defined as an hour or less. It's just impossible to guarantee it. There's just no other way around it. Now, I think there's also 2 other points. One is, could we be required to have a lockbox or a keypad? So with the police department, if there's an issue, they type in our key code and they can get in. So that might eliminate some of the need for even someone to be there. Another point is, I mean, my wife and I are there a fair amount of time. Hopefully she'll be retiring next year or 2. We'll be there more often. So if we're here for a week and we're in Portland for dinner or whatever, and something bad happens at the house, do we need someone to be able to respond within an hour? Well, if not, why is the other 4,500 people in the house, how come they don't have to have someone respond in an hour if they're out of town, if you kind of catch my drift there. So that's the other issue with the statement. Do we need someone to respond 24 hours a day if only a tenant is there, or if it's empty, or if we're there? So I think just some clarification there would be helpful. And again, just absolute kudos to everything. That's really the only question I have. Any questions, or open up to anyone else who might have? No? Okay.
Thank you, I really appreciate that. It's helpful. Any other public comment? Come right on up.
Hi, My name is Steve August. I live at 29 Cherry Street. And I have a very different perspective on short-term rentals than this gentleman, and maybe that some of you. I would use the word neighbor, but we're not really. We live across the street from a large Airbnb that is not owner-occupied. One that, when occupied to its capacity, according to its advertising, more than almost doubles the population of Cherry Street. It is it's an issue. It's an issue. For me, the question breaks. Well, first I want to thank the Housing Subcommittee, the Housing Committee. Misty and the code enforcement officer met with me at length, and thanks for bringing this forward. I think what we have here, though, is something that addresses registration but not regulation. And I would hope for something beyond something additional that helps us regulate these Airbnbs. And for me, the issue breaks in another way, which is owner-occupied versus not owner-occupied. I think if the unit is owner-occupied, I use Airbnbs when I travel. I seek out the owner more often than not. I think they're different. They relate to Bath. Owners of Airbnbs that run them in the city relate to the neighborhood, relate to the city of Bath differently than a unit which is not owner occupied and managed by sometimes management companies that aren't even in Maine, quite frankly. The proposal, I'm looking at the clock, it's very disconcerting. The proposal, it is a very light touch, and I understand that was part of the intent of the committee, to bring something that did not heavily weigh on Airbnbs as they currently function in the city and the current Airbnbs and current Airbnb owners. But it's such a light touch that I'm not sure whether it accomplishes anything that effectively helps us deal with some of the problems that we've encountered. About a month ago, a wedding was held at the Airbnb across the street from us. Probably 40 to 50 individuals. The parking, the street was full. We contacted the police at that time, or the police were contacted to see whether or not the street was impassable, whether noise was an issue, was not. We're aware of one other event that has been held at that facility. Was rented by a group of consultants, and they held meetings at that facility. We have businesses in Bath that do that for profit, and I think that's appropriate. It's not appropriate for an Airbnb owner to do that. This Airbnbs that are not owner-occupied function as businesses. And they are businesses embedded in our residential neighborhoods. And I think we have to be very cautious about that. Specifically on I know this is probably going to go to a public hearing, and I'll have an opportunity to bring out more specific issues, but just a couple things came to mind. Councilor McCorkle raised one question on, there's just some ambiguity in language. For example, in one place it talks about, in one section it talks about a short-term rental shall be eligible for renewal only if the following criteria are met, and then it specifies what those criteria are. And then later it introduces the word may be qualified or may be disqualified if those criteria are not met.
10 seconds.
Okay, well, that does it. I'll show up at the public hearing. I hope careful consideration is given to this. These Airbnbs are very impactful on our neighborhoods. Thanks.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Do we have any other public comment? Sure.
My name's Michael Princiata. I'm a resident at 77 Washington Street, neighbor with Mr. Marks there. I am an Airbnb owner, and my take on this is that there still seems to be some ambiguity in the language. More specifically, as an owner, we're owning multiple properties in the city. Am I allowed to get multiple licenses for other properties? And even if I don't necessarily use the property for an Airbnb, can I hold a license at that property with the intent to sometime use that as an Airbnb? Just kind of defining that, I agree with both of the gentlemen that spoke prior. I agree that Airbnbs have no place as an event space and like a conference center. I agree that there needs to be regulation around that. Weddings alike. I also think as an owner of one, where I do not live there, I live close by, I think it could be a great opportunity for a lot of growth of the local businesses and such that. So my question is just, one about, can I hold multiple licenses for different properties? Two would be, do I have to use those licenses in order to hold them? And third would be, third would be the code enforcement's involvement. If there is a complaint, and this is just my novice of not knowing, what is a code enforcement officer allowed to do? Is he allowed to come to the property and walk around my yard? And I guess I would just want to know what he or she, if we have a different codes person, what they're allowed to do. And lastly, I got plenty of time. I'd give you 3 minutes if it was allowed. Lastly would just be, again, ambiguity around, we mentioned renting a room out. Let's say I have a home that has 5 rooms and I rent 3 rooms out. Am I allowed to be exempt under, I'm not renting out the entire property where I'm renting rooms? And then the last bit of that, I kind of feel if there's one rule, it should be for everyone. It's difficult to see that these folks that are renting rooms out don't need to play by kind of the same rules that we're playing by, whether it be emergency contacts or these licensing. To me, I've stayed at many Airbnbs where folks, they're their primary residences and we're renting out a room there. They can be there, they cannot be there. If one is not there, what happens then? They don't have anybody to call because they're renting a room. I just think there's more discussion around that, and those would be my points there. And I do appreciate the work everyone's done. I was very apprehensive at the beginning of hearing licensing for this, but I do think that the committee has gone about it in a nice way of involving owners, and it has been very nice to see that as an owner. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. Do we have any other public comment? All right, seeing none. Misty, would you be able to, I don't know if I want to call on you to maybe address a few things that were brought up. I would point people to the line in here that indicates that short-term rental units shall not be used for event space. But I wondered if you were able to answer address any concerns that were raised.
Yep, absolutely. So I will go through and do my best to touch on the concerns I was able to record here. So specifically to the issue that Mr. August raised regarding events, this is why we are referencing the land use code. So events, so places that use, rent their buildings for events specifically, that is regulated through the land use code. There's an entire process that a property owner would need to go through, which addresses things like, parking and noise and waste and all of those other things for that specific type of use. And so that is why we regulate that. So even now without a short-term rental license, that is potentially a violation of the land use code, and the code enforcement officer has been investigating it. Speaking to CEO involvement in these, it would just be very similar to things like a land use violation. I think that our code enforcement officer would need to speak more specifically to their protocols of how they approach, but typically it does involve contacting an owner to gather more information. A site visit may be warranted, which they would, require permission to access the property. I think there are specific reasons that they might be able to enter a property without owner permission, but those are very rare situations, and I wouldn't want to get into that. And I think that probably involves more of police than code enforcement. But so that is something that typically is coordinated with the property owner as part of their investigation. Then to also address some of the questions around if an owner has multiple properties, can they have multiple licenses? Absolutely. There is no restriction on the number of licenses that a specific person may have. Can you hold a license but not use it? That specifically is addressed in this ordinance on the renewal process. And I believe, let me find the section, it is in
6A sub B.
Thank you so much. And that is around 30 days. So if somebody is to have a license, this is requiring that at least 30 days, it does not need to be consecutive, but 30 days out of the entire year that it is being used as a short-term rental. And the reason they did that is there was concern that people may, just hold license, whether that is just in case they might want to someday do a short-term rental, or to actually prevent short-term rentals. And so therefore, if the license cap needs to be revisited, we want to know and want the housing committee to be able to review that and understand what's going on. And so they tried to make sure, they want to know that these are being operated as short-term rentals. And then the other question was around multiple rooms. So this is one that gets very complicated. So again, this is extremely nuanced stuff when you get into codes. I mean, to Adam and Justin, I give them a lot of credit for the work that they do, because there is always one more thing. So when you are renting a room, specifically renting rooms in a residential home, there are a number of things that that code enforcement needs to look at. So you can eventually trigger a lodging house if you get to a certain number of guests that you have, not rooms, guests. And so I believe it's around 5 guests. And this is, again, something that Adam would need to specifically address.
I just want
Yes.
to once again take the opportunity to say Misty Parker is not a codes enforcement
Thank you.
officer, and want to make sure we don't get too deep into the
Disclaimer.
weeds in a public
Yes.
meeting. Certainly something we can review with codes enforcement and get back.
Exactly, and really the intent is to say that there are several other ordinance requirements that are alive somewhere else, either under state statute or local ordinance, that start to begin to regulate things like lodging houses, and number of rooms that get rented out, and there's a variety of different triggers that do happen. I think
Thank
I
you.
addressed all the questions that are out there.
Thank you, Misty. Do we have any final council comment? Councilor Dunn.
So we vote tonight and it comes back for public hearing and a second passage. Could I suggest that Adam be invited to come and speak to some of these questions? I'd be, let me put it another way. I would be more comfortable at second passage if we could get more clarity, because if I can't understand it, everyone else probably can.
Can I just
But
ask?
it's complicated.
I think that is an excellent idea, and if counselors have specific questions,
Yeah.
if you could provide those to the city manager in advance so that Adam can come prepared with most of them, because I imagine that he will want to review the actual ordinances themselves himself and have that information available and cite it specifically, as opposed to being put on the spot too.
Excellent.
But I'm sure he can handle other questions as well.
Yeah. And I will say, and I think Misty touched upon this a little bit, like, there's a lot of nuance to the city's land use code and ordinances, and so I think there's a lot of getting more refined on what you actually want clarity on for the codes officer will be important, because of exactly what Misty just said. We'll be coming prepared into the meeting, because you could go down some rabbit holes that are very site-specific or building or zoning district specific.
Us go down a rabbit hole, imagine.
All right, any other counselor comments? Counselor McCorkle.
Thank you. I want to express gratitude for the Housing Committee, for Misty, for Adam and Justin's work on this. Also, I expect that while the Housing Committee is supposed to review this biannually, I expect we'll learn a lot in the first year and be talking about this probably this time next year.
Was there, okay. All right, any other council comment? I think we're ready to move on to a roll call vote then. Thank you.
Counselor Ambrosino.
Yes.
Counselor Marks.
Yes.
Counselor Gazzetti.
Yes.
Counselor Nordman.
Yes.
Counselor Dunn.
Yes.
Counselor DeShane.
Yes.
Counselor McCorkle.
Yes.
Counselor Mansfield Pryor.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. All right, we have a mix of 4, are they all we have 4,
One is a new
One's a new appointment.
one's a new appointment and 3 reappointments. Thank you. Had trouble with my math. Do we have a motion to accept these as a slate?
So moved.
Second.
Excellent. Darcy, I will turn to you.
Counselor Mansfield Pryor.
Yes.
Counselor McCorkle.
Yes.
Counselor DeShane.
Yes.
Counselor Dunn.
Yes.
Counselor Norman.
Yes.
Counselor Gazzetti.
Yes.
Counselor Marks.
Yes.
Counselor Ambrosino.
Yes.
Thank you.
Excellent. We have moved on to counselor comments. Do we have any counselors this evening who would like to address council? Counselor Dunn.
Earlier tonight, I queried our city clerk about our election process here in Bath. And my point was to illustrate that the Constitution unambiguously requires that elections are governed by each state with clear rules and are managed ultimately by local city clerks. This is the epitome of local control. In the mind of some, the solution to an unpopular platform is to make it harder for certain voters to exercise the one thing that makes us all equal, voting. The election security trope is a solution in search of a problem instead of solving real problems. There is no election security problem because our elections are secured by our local staff. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor Dunn. I appreciate that.
Me too.
Do we have any other council comment? Let's see. I will jump in if we don't have anyone else. I wanted to give council and the public a little bit of an update, sort of a status update about immigration matters here in our community. I spoke before council a couple months ago. I shared my own family story about immigrating to the U.S. and how it inspired me to volunteer my pro bono hours with ILAP, Maine's immigrant legal aid organization. At that time, I shared how concerned I was that we were seeing what I saw as due process violations as people in our country, in our state, have been detained by ICE, and that we would be having council conversations regarding how the city can respond, how best to act as a municipality. Since that time, just a couple months ago, I have had questions from constituents. And when we had Border Patrol agents execute a stop in Bath a couple weeks ago, we saw a considerable community response. So I just wanted to give everyone a little bit of an update. Here is where we stand right now. Bath Police Department complies with state and federal law. This means a number of things. This means that Bath police officers do not pull people over because they might look, whatever that means, look like they might not be citizens. Bath PD does not ask anyone about their immigration status. When they have an encounter with a person, they will ask for a name and a date of birth. If there is an active warrant from any state or any federal agency, it should show up. If and when the PD runs a license or ID through their system. If the Bath Police Department has contact with an individual and that person's name has been flagged in a federal database to contact ICE, Border Patrol, or any other federal agency, the police department will contact that federal agency. Bath Police Department does not have the authority to detain anyone based on their immigration status. If a federal agency chooses to follow up on the information that the Bath PD has recently had contact with someone they have flagged, that has always been at the federal agency's discretion. The fact that Bath PD complies with state and federal law also means that if any federal agency, be it ICE, be it Border Patrol, Secret Service, FBI, I'm sure there are others, is going to execute a federal warrant here in Bath, Bath PD does not stand in their way. Now, I know that many counselors and residents have been watching closely as ICE officers have taken people into custody in Maine and beyond. Counselor Gazzetti and I spoke recently with an immigration policy expert to discuss whether there are things that we can be doing at a municipal level. I know other counselors here and I have had a number of conversations about the balance between wanting to ensure that all of our constituents are safe and not wanting to draw attention to our small city by passing ordinances that might make some of us feel better that we did something, but do not actually increase safety for non-citizens in Bath. We've had our city solicitor review ordinances that have been passed by other out-of-state municipalities and have concluded that they achieve the latter. The stop by Border Patrol in Bath recently exposed to all of us just how on edge many people are, which I frankly consider not unreasonable given the political atmosphere. In this instance, Border Patrol was behind a vehicle on Route 1 and was ready to execute a stop. When the vehicle got off in Bath, they executed the stop here. Bath PD was notified and was on site, but was not really involved. Taken in isolation, this happened by the book. And when the same thing happened 5 or 10 years ago, it frankly was not terribly noteworthy. But today, with the rising reports of ICE arresting people without showing warrants, engaging in tactics that involve arresting groups of people first and sorting out identity and immigration status later, I understand how unnerving this was to many people in Bath. In response, I just want to share that Chief Booth met with representatives from RSU 1, Bath Housing, Midcoast New Mainers, and the United Way of Midcoast Maine to communicate and to share information about this issue in the midst of the current climate. We want to remain a community in which all residents feel safe sending their kids to school and feel safe calling the police if they need to. We are also a community that adheres to the rule of law. So I don't have a solution to the problem of a federal agency not adhering to the rule of law, except to say that we on a municipal level cannot follow that lead. So as a council, we will continue to monitor the situation as it applies to Bath, and we will keep you informed. We will continue having these conversations. So I appreciate your time tonight. Thank you. Does anyone else have anything, any other council comments? Councilor Gazzetti, and then I'll turn to Councilor Everson.
I want to sincerely thank Chair Johnson for her leadership on this issue. She's been kind enough to include me in some of the conversations, and I just want to second how she's described our current situation as a municipality. With that said, I don't want people to feel helpless and hopeless as though they can't take steps forward to continue to address this situation on a personal level if they want to. And so I just wanted, I mean, one of the reasons I was comfortable with where we are now is at the state level, they are considering a bill that statewide would limit local and state immigration and enforcement activities. And that's LD 1971, if anybody wants to look into it. It was sitting on the governor's desk. So she has the opportunity to either veto it or sign it when the legislature comes back in session. So again, if you want to learn more about that, that's LD 1971. And I also just wanted to share the name of some nonprofit organizations that when Miriam and I met with this policy expert, I asked for some good organizations that people could get involved with if they want to. And some of those organizations are the Maine Solidarity Fund, the Capital Area New Mainers Project, and Immigration Legal Assistance Project. So as Miriam said, I mean, Chair Johnson said, I completely agree that as a council, we should continue to monitor the situation, but also agree that right now, the best thing we can do is just keep our eyes on everything that's happening.
Thank you, Councilor Guzzetti. Councilor Ambrosino?
Yeah, just wanted to make some follow-up comments from our meeting tonight. I know we covered a lot of detail across many subjects, so sometimes it's hard to like put things together in the moment until you had a moment to reflect. But I wanted to appreciate the Environmental Coalition priorities. Am I saying that right? Jackson showing up and presenting and giving us a good case on why the state is thinking about the Maine Superfund. And just wanted to make some comments about while federal air quality standards address ongoing emissions, they don't clean up legacy contamination that still impacts our land and neighborhoods we live in. And supporting a state fund isn't really about duplicating the EPA's work. It's really about filling the gap and protecting like long-term health and redevelopment potential. So thinking about a state fund, I think it will give Maine the ability to respond locally when the EPA can't. But I totally get the like what the optics look like by accepting any type of resolution that's pretty bold and forward-thinking, and I appreciate all my counselors' comments when it comes to this kind of subject that we have in front of us sometimes in the moment it's hard to take it all in at once, so thank you.
Thank you. Any, Councilor Dunn?
I actually have a question going back to your remarks.
Sure.
And it's slightly operational in the event that an encounter by the police department generates a name shows up, an agency calls back and says, if you have the person in custody, can you hang on to them, please? What is our procedure? They have to be, is there a warrant? Is there a courtesy?
I should probably defer to Chief Booth for this. I know poor
Sorry to
Chief Booth
put you on the
has
spot.
stuck around all meeting in case folks have
Typically,
questions just like this.
typically when we have a situation where we have another agency, whether that be county, state, federal, and they ask us to do a favor, it's at the discretion of the officer and the supervisor on scene if they can comply with that. Usually, you know, it's like, all right, I can be there in 20 minutes. That's not a big deal, right? But when we're dealing with these people, we usually have underlying state crimes that we're dealing with. If we have no reason to retain that person, it's not our job to enforce federal laws. So that's where we can just say, sorry, we can't deal with that right now. We've got other things going on. It's your job to handle that. So there's a little bit of discretion involved, but typically there's a good cooperation with all of the different law enforcement agencies.
And so that would explain the entry of name and birth date, and it comes back with agency sub X has an interest. What is the likelihood that you would get the call back that quickly while you don't have a reason to hold that person? Agency sub X does, or has a wish to. How quickly do you get a response?
It's all kind of dependent on the situation and the agency involved. You know, again, if it's an immigration thing, we have no authority to detain on an immigration warrant. But if it's a federal crime and there's a criminal case going on, then we probably would hold for that agency. It depends on the situation.
But going back to what you just said, in the case of immigration, there's no reason that we would retain someone.
There isn't, unless there was unless there was an online criminal case,
Okay.
usually. And that's typically when we see these, there's always something else going on criminally. So I don't have I've never experienced just a sole immigration issue. We haven't seen that yet.
Last question, Border Patrol is around on a regular basis?
They've been around, we have a close working relationship with Border Patrol, US Marshals, the FBI, all of the federal agencies. They've been on the Mid-Coast for at least 5 or 6 years. And they've been on the border with Canada for longer than that.
Thank you. All right, does anyone have any other council comments, or I think we're ready to move into executive session? Of which I should say, do we have a motion to adjourn to executive session?
So moved.
We do have a real estate matter per Title I, Section 4056C.
Second.
Second, great.
Thanks.
Do we need a roll call vote?
Motion.
Okay.
Okay, Counselor Ambrosino.
You can, you're good.
Counselor Ambrosino.
Oh, yes, sorry.
Counselor Marks.
Yes.
Counselor Gazzetti.
Yes.
Counselor Norman.
Yes.
Don.
Yes?
Counselor DeShant.
Yes.
Counselor McCorkle.
Yes.
And Counselor Mansfield Pryor.
Yes.
That's like a slip, right?
Get out of here, Chris.